A really big change just happened in Canadian citizenship law. And honestly, it could mean that thousands of people all over the world just became Canadian citizens, maybe without even knowing it yet. So let's break down exactly what's going on.
Just think about this for a second. Imagine you're a proud Canadian, through and through. But because you happen to be born outside of Canada yourself, you were legally blocked from passing that identity and all the rights that come with it onto your own kids. For a lot of people, that was the frustrating reality for years. But now, well, that's all changed.
So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll look at the Lost Canadians problem and why a major law was struck down as unconstitutional. Then, we'll dive into the solution, which is Bill C-3, break down the brand new rules for citizenship, and figure out what this substantial connection thing is all about. And finally, we'll get to the big one, what this all might mean for you.
All right, so let's start at the beginning with this Lost Canadians problem. How did we even get here? Well, this wasn't something that just happened overnight. It was really an unintended consequence of laws that have been changing for decades.
You know, Canada's very first Citizenship Act only came about back in 1947. And since then, it's been tweaked and amended so many times. And while those changes were usually meant to help, they ended up creating these really complicated situations where some people just fell through the cracks.
The real heart of the issue was a rule from 2009 called the First Generation Limit. And here's the deal with it. If you were a Canadian citizen, but you were born abroad, this rule literally stopped you from automatically passing your citizenship to your own child if they were also born abroad. It basically created this whole group of people with really deep family roots in Canada who were just legally cut off from their own heritage.
And that's how these people became known as Lost Canadians. This quote here from Don Chapman, who's been fighting this fight for years, really captures the feeling. This was never just about some legal technicality. It was about people losing a huge part of their identity because of a law that just felt completely outdated and unfair.
So, what finally broke the logjam? Well, the whole thing got turned on its head by a huge court decision that basically forced the government to act. This was the turning point.
This whole journey took more than a decade to play out. You can see the law was put in place back in 2009. But then, on December 19, 2023, the Ontario Superior Court of Justice came down with a bombshell ruling. They declared that limit unconstitutional. And that decision is what started the clock ticking, leading right to this new law, Bill C-3. So why was it unconstitutional? The court basically said the old law created two different classes of Canadians, and it unfairly punished people just based on where they happened to be born. It was a straight-up violation of fundamental rights guaranteed by Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The government saw the writing on the wall and decided not to even appeal the decision.
And so, in response to that massive court ruling, Parliament got to work and created a new piece of legislation, Bill C-3. This bill really had three big goals. Number one, go back in time and fix the problem, restoring citizenship to all those lost Canadians. Number two, create a new, fair, and consistent path forward so this doesn't happen again. And third, and this is key, to get rid of that rigid, kind of arbitrary one-generation rule and replace it with something that makes more sense, a test based on a person's actual ties to Canada.
Okay, now we're getting to the most important part of this entire explainer, the new rules. And how they affect you depends entirely on one critical thing, your birthday. The new law basically creates two different timelines based on one date. So listen closely. If you were born before December 15th, 2025, and you would have been a citizen if that old rule never existed, well, guess what? In most cases, you are now automatically a Canadian citizen. It's a retroactive fix. But if you're born on or after that date, your Canadian parent can only pass citizenship onto you if they meet a brand new test, the substantial connection test. Okay, so what in the world is this new substantial connection test that's going to apply to everybody in the future? It all comes down to this number right here, 1,095. What on earth does that mean? It means 3 years. That's it. To pass on citizenship to your child born abroad, you, the Canadian parent who was also born abroad, have to prove you physically spent a grand total of at least 1,095 days inside Canada at some point before your child was born or adopted. The days don't have to be all in a row. They just have to add up. What this really shows is a huge shift in thinking. The law isn't just looking at a family tree anymore. Instead, it's measuring a real, lived connection to the country. It's a move away from an abstract, arbitrary rule to a concrete standard that's all about physical presence.
All right, we've gone through the history, the court case, the new rules. Now, let's put it all together and figure out what this could mean for you personally. So if you're watching this and thinking, hey, this might be me, the process is pretty straightforward. First step is to just assess your eligibility based on everything we've talked about, especially that key date, December 15th, 2025. If it looks like you qualify, your next move is to apply for a citizenship certificate. This is the official document, the real proof of your Canadian status. And once you have that in your hands, you can use it to apply for a Canadian passport. You know, this new law is about so much more than just legal status. It's about identity, it's about family, and it's about belonging. For a whole generation of lost Canadians, this is finally a chance to be found. And it kind of leaves us all with a bigger question to think about, right? What does being a citizen of a country really mean to you?